All right, let's jump right in. Today we're talking about a massive behind-the-scenes change in the world of medical devices. And trust me, it affects everything from a simple syringe to the most complex pacemaker.
I mean, think about it. It's a pretty fundamental question, right? When you or someone you love relies on a medical device, you're placing your trust in it. You trust it's been designed, built, and tested to the absolute highest standards. But who actually sets those standards? And how do we know they're being followed?
Well, for a very long time in the United States, the answer was a single, very specific set of American regulations. But in today's world where companies operate globally, that's just not cutting it anymore. So the rulebook is getting a complete rewrite to speak a much more universal language. Okay, so to really get where we're going, we first have to understand where we've been. Let's unpack the old system and why, frankly, it was becoming a maze. So picture this. For years, you had this major split. In the US, you had the FDA's own mandatory rulebook, the Quality System Regulation, or QSR for short. But nearly everywhere else in the world, the gold standard was something called ISO 13485. If you were a global company, this was a nightmare. It meant two sets of rules, two sets of paperwork, two entirely different quality systems just to sell the exact same device. And this wasn't just a minor headache. We're talking about a system that's been in place since 1996, governing every single step of a device's life, from the initial idea all the way to post-market service. That dual compliance burden was a huge drag on innovation. It added incredible cost and complexity for companies just trying to get life-saving devices out to patients around the world.
So what did the FDA do about it? Well, instead of just trying to patch up the old system, they decided to do something much bolder. Build a bridge to the rest of the world.
Now, this change didn't happen overnight. It's been decades in the making. The original QSR, as we said, was from '96. And after years of work, the FDA finally issued the brand new rule in January of 2024. And that final date you see there, February 2nd, 2026, that's the hard deadline. It gives the entire industry a 2-year runway to get their systems completely overhauled and compliant.
So what is this new system? It's called the Quality Management System Regulation, or QMSR, and its core mission is actually pretty simple. Instead of the US having its own separate rulebook, the QMSR officially pulls that international standard, ISO 13485, directly into US law. One standard to rule them all, so to speak.
You might be wondering, why the big switch? Well, the FDA itself said it best. They determined that the international standards requirements are substantially similar to the old US rules anyway. They're both aiming for the exact same thing, making sure medical devices are safe and effective. So this is really all about alignment, not about lowering the bar. The end game here is to create a true universal language for quality. You know, when everyone's speaking the same language, it just makes everything easier. It cuts down on red tape, lowers costs, and most importantly, it can actually help speed up the process of getting safe, game-changing devices to the patients who need them, no matter where they happen to live. But, and this is a big but, this is not just a simple copy and paste job. Harmonizing these rules comes with a really critical catch, one that seriously raises the stakes for every single manufacturer out there. Because while most of these changes are about simplifying and aligning things, there's one new provision that totally changes the game. It introduces a whole new level of transparency and, frankly, a whole new level of risk. Okay, here it is in a nutshell. Under the old rules, a company's own internal audits were basically off limits during routine FDA inspections. They were a private space to find and fix your own problems. Well, under the new QMSR, that shield is completely gone. FDA inspectors can now walk in and ask to see those internal audit reports. So why is this such a seismic shift? Because suddenly, an internal problem you've documented can become an immediate external liability. This forces a massive cultural change. You can't just find an issue anymore and, plan to get to it later. You have to have a rock-solid closed-loop process to investigate and fix problems right away. It's really pushing the entire industry from a mindset of just reacting to rules to proactively building quality from the ground up. And this new level of scrutiny is especially important when you look at the hard data, when you see where medical device companies have historically dropped the ball the most. So let me just ask you, what do you think is the #1 reason companies get hit with violations from the FDA? Is it a design flaw? A mistake in manufacturing? What do you think? The answer is 72%. That is a jaw-dropping number. But 72% of what? Well, according to a deep dive into FDA warning letters, a full 72% of violations were for failures in one single area: corrective and preventive action, or CAPA. Think of CAPA as the quality immune system. It's the formal process for not just fixing a problem that happened, but for digging down to the root cause to make sure it can never happen again. It's the absolute foundation of a quality system, and it is where companies are failing most often. But it gets even more telling when you look closer. The single biggest CAPA failure, making up 72% of those violations, wasn't some complex scientific error. No, it was a failure to simply establish and maintain procedures in the first place. Think about that. It's not about executing a plan poorly. It's about not even having a proper, documented plan to begin with. Okay, so we've got a huge regulatory shift, way more scrutiny, and a very clear picture of the industry's biggest weak spot. So, what's the path forward for companies facing that 2026 deadline? Well, the experts have laid out a pretty clear 5-step roadmap. It starts with the basics, really learning the new rule, doing a gap analysis to see where you fall short. But the really critical steps go beyond paperwork. It's about training your team and, crucially, leveraging technology to build a quality system that is transparent, efficient, and ready for this new level of inspection. At the end of the day, this whole transition is about so much more than just checking off a new set of boxes on a form. The key takeaway is this: the future is about building a truly robust, proactive quality system that's integrated into everything you do. It's not about just meeting the minimums anymore. It's about building for a global stage where expectations are higher than ever.
Which really leaves us with one final question to think about. Is this QMSR just an administrative update, a new rulebook for the same old game, or does this massive shift toward global harmony and radical transparency signal the start of a brand new era for quality and patient safety in the medical device world? I think that's something we're all going to be watching very, very closely.